Today we're going to learn about one-point perspective blocks and create an art piece like this. You can see we're going to be going over a variety of different points and curves and all sorts of things for this project. To start, we're going to draw a straight line across the paper. Doesn't need to be directly in the center, so don't worry about measuring out what's what. And you're going to be putting a dot near the center, eyeball the center of the paper, and this is called your vanishing point. It's where all the lines are going to lead. Now let's start by just drawing some shapes out before we get into the perspective part. Let's start with a square, triangle, an S, get a few letters in there too. A star. Now notice how large I'm making these shapes. You know, they're not exactly perfect either, which is okay. And the last is an A, and make sure you add the eye of the A. Eye meaning the area right here. Alright, here we go. So the vanishing point I like to call as if it's a flashlight. And when you're looking at these points, what do you think this flashlight, vanishing point, is shining on? So I would say, starting with the square, it is shining on this point, and this point. It is not shining on this point. So I'm going to put an X there for the example. Then what I'm going to do is play the connect the dot game. I'm going to connect each point to the vanishing point. Alright, and that's where I am with that. Next, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line it up with the side wall of the square here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ruler and I'm going to drag it down, keeping it the same horizontal length of the square here, and then I'm going to place my line. This guarantees that you will get that 3D look at the end of this. I'm going to do the same for the top, make sure it's nice and straight, and then I'm going to drag it down until I arrive to the other line and draw my line. And there you go. You have your first one-point perspective shape. Now let's look here. Now this might look a little confusing because, you know, what does the flashlight vanishing point shine on? So to test out to see what lines up with what, it looks like not so much this point here, so we'll just do an X. And this point here lines up, so I'll just put that here. And it looks like this point as well lines up. So if you're ever unsure, just line the ruler up and see if it goes. If it doesn't go, it doesn't go. You don't do anything. The next is I'm going to line my ruler up with these 2 points, make sure I have a nice diagonal, and I'm going to do the same thing I did with my square. I'm going to drag it and place the line. Now notice it only needs one side because this point does not reach the vanishing point. Next is, let's just continue on with the shapes before we get on with the letters. I'm going to look at this star here. So we definitely have this point. We'll just go through just to make sure. This point, no, because it goes through the leg of the star. This point, definitely. The armpit of the star, the hand. And let's just have a look at the head here. It does, but we will stop short on top of the arm. Now this arm over here does not reach the vanishing point because it goes through the body of the star. Now let's connect these dots. And now notice this one. So I'm going to line it up, and I see where the arm starts. So I'm going to draw the line and stop right there. Now, when doing the star, you're doing the same thing as you did with the triangle and the square. All right, you're going to take your ruler, and you're going to line it up with this segment of the star only. So from here to here. And you're going to drag it down and place a line. Notice how this line goes right directly into this leg because it goes right into the center from here to here. This point does not connect to this point, so it must be diagonal here. Next is the other leg. Notice, lining my ruler up from this point to this point, dragging my ruler down in that mild diagonal and placing the line down. Doing the same thing up here, lining it up, dragging it down, placing the line right here. Alright, so the head of the star, now notice how thick we have this area here. So with that in mind, I don't believe we see much of that line, so I'm going to line it up anyway. See my lines here a little crooked, I just got to make it straight. You can just see it maybe goes to about here. You know, when it's that close, is it worth it? Probably not. So you can add the line, you don't need to add the line. It's up to you, depending on where the angle of your star is to the vanishing point. Your star might be over here, and you might have to add that, which is fine. All right, so now let's do the vanishing point, the perspective to this A. So with the flashlight, I see definitely this point here, this point here, this point here, here, and here. Now let's just check to see if this goes, and it does. And there's one more point inside the eye, because it is a three-dimensional A we're making. You want to add this point here as well. So let's go ahead and connect those dots. And connect. And now you have that. Alright, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to do the same thing you've been doing with the other shapes, just making sure you're lining up to the side that you're perspectiving, if that's a word. Alright, and you're going to drag the ruler down, boom, bada bing, place it there. Alright, continue on to the other areas of the A. Now notice this part of my A, by accident, well, it doesn't really matter, is a little angled up. So I'm making sure my ruler here is exactly the same. So lining it up with the last line I made, adding that slight angle. Alright, those little details, they matter. Alright, the next thing is this line here, lining it up, dragging it down, lining it up, placing it down. Whoop. Let me do that again. I got a little flippity-floppity here. There we go. Boom. And then my last right here. Now notice, this wasn't something that we created, a line for perspective, but we still need to add it due to where that last line ended. So a nice straight line there. And boom, it's been created. The last one we're going to make is the star. And I'm going to add some perspective dots here. Can make sure they can line up. Now, for future purposes, I'm going to create a dot in the center of my S. And now for the top. Now the top's going to be a little tricky. So what you're doing here is you're finding the farthest curve bit that you want to line up to the vanishing point. So notice I'm taking my ruler, I'm seeing where is the furthest bit that lines up with the point, and I'm placing it down. All right, so now I'm going to take these points and I'm going to line them up. Like so. Notice these points aren't reached because the round goes all the way up here. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to line these up. Now, as we know that we can't really use a ruler on rounded edges, so here's what we're going to do. We're just going to do this one first. Then we are going to line this up. So this comes up like it connects a little high. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start it here, connect, go up, then with this one I'm copying this curve, placing it down like so. So see how I copied what is here. So I took, this one isn't that right, so I have a handy dandy eraser here. Let's fix that a bit. And I'm going to replicate this curve here. I'm going to actually start it up here. I'm going to create this here, making sure this S is good. All right. So it should be something like this in the end. Notice, I'm just double checking to make sure it lines up and replicating this to this. This will be important for later lessons in my class. Alright, so there you have it. What you can do to finish up is, erase these lines going to the vanishing point. And continue along your way. All right, thank you for watching.